Thank you, Sim. I'm not going to spend too much time. I want to get as much out of this hour as possible, and make best use of everybody's time so you get as much value and be enriched by this session. Thank you, Jens, so much for joining us today and giving some of your precious time to this amazing cohort of people. And what Jens will be taking you through today is, well, Jens will tell you some more, but it's really about how can we exploit the world. You know, there's a whole world outside of the UK, and this is about maximizing your impact and your access to the global markets. So with no more yatta from me, I'm handing over to Jens. Jens, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay. And as Simone said, please ask questions at any moment, whenever you want, okay? Because there's lots of slides, and some of the slides, we can keep it rather simple on the surface, but there might be some things popping up on the slide, like, I want to know more about this or that, you know, just don't wait for the end, just shout out whenever you like. So my name is Jens. I work for Fremantle, and I run a unit called Fremantle International. And what we do is, we're the interface of creation, production, and the global market. So we help to finance and sell TV shows around the world. And whenever we are super successful with placing a show around the world, then you can read a press release somewhere in broadcast or somewhere. Responder sold in 180 territories around the world. So that's the jackpot, right? That's fantastic. So we are working on one hand, we are working on monetizing a show, making money for the producer. But on the other hand, we really want to create reach for a show. We want to create eyeballs for a show. We want to create brands in the global market. That's the ultimate goal. And then if we are successful with that, the money follows, right? The money follows the reach. And then whatever money we create goes back to the producer and to finance the next show. And we do that for, that's important, we do that for all Fremantle production companies, but at the same time, we're also doing it for a lot of independent production companies. So if there's an independent factual or drama producer in the UK or in Italy or in America or in Canada, and they have a great show and they're interested in global distribution, they can come to us. So I would say every given year, we work on about 100 properties. So we launch 100 new shows to the global market through our network of Fremantle International. And about a third of those shows are from independent producers. So we are an open shop. We are a service provider for everybody, basically. And to give you a little bit of an impression of what kind of shows we're working on, let's have a little look into a reel that we prepared for you.
The greatest ideas happen when creativity is set free. Free to reinvent, to reimagine. That is why we believe in making the connection and giving the support and the freedom the brightest talents need.
Let's get it on!
To light up the world.
Welcome to Rich Gonzalez!
What's about to happen might seem like imperfect parenting.
This is a larger story of what was really going on with the slave trade.
From every corner of the world, for every corner of the world, connecting creativity.
Cool. I hope you like that. So what you see here on that slide is a little bit what you saw in the reel already. So it's like at our heart, we are an entertainment company. So American Idol, Got Talent, those are core shows for us, and we produce them all around the world. So you can say, like, for instance, for Got Talent, at any given moment, there are about 20, 30 versions of Got Talent on air around the globe. So there's a China's Got Talent, there's a Mexico Got Talent, there is Sweden's Got Talent. There's all these local versions of Got Talent, or as well as of American Idol. We love drama. We, as Fremantle, we really focus on drama since the last 10 years. And our drama comes out of the UK and North America, but our drama as well comes a lot from the continent. So we are probably in the global market, we are the leaders in non-English language drama. So we produce a lot out of Europe. Then we love lifestyle. With you see Jamie Oliver here. We work with Jamie's company since 20 years. We sell his shows, we finance some of his shows, we take him out around the world. And then we love premium factual. You saw in the reel as well as here, Sam Jackson. That was a wonderful experience. 3 years ago, it kicked off. I got contacted by a Canadian producer, not Fremantle, and he wanted help on a show called Enslaved, the history of slavery. And the big coup in that show was to have Sam Jackson, who helped to tell the story, and he brought it to life. Some stats on the next slide. And these are some incredible numbers. These are just Fremantle numbers. So every year, last year, we produced, as Fremantle, we produced 12,000 hours of programming, and we produced that out of 45 production companies, out of 20 countries. So there are countries where we, quote unquote, only have one Fremantle production company, like Fremantle France. We have Fremantle France. It's one production company out of France. But then, especially in the UK, we have several production companies based in the UK, and we produce shows out of several labels. We have a reach, we believe, roughly 2 billion in global audiences we reached last year with our show. Social media is really strong for us. We had at least 40 billion views last year around our shows. What we do in social media is, for instance, around Got Talent, we create Got Talent clip channels and put them on YouTube and Facebook, and therefore, through social media, extend the reach of our entertainment shows. In 21, we produced 430 entertainment shows, a good 80 dramas and films, and 20 documentaries. So you see our focus still is entertainment as Fremantle. On the next slide. This gives you an idea of our global reach. So Fremantle has production companies in, this is a little bit hard to read. I have to focus myself. So you have the circle almost in the middle, the bottom, that's the UK. You see all our production labels that we operate out of the UK, from Thames and Talkback and Naked. Then you have the bit in the middle. Those are all production labels out of Europe, basically. Then we produce on the left-hand side, we produce out of North America, Fremantle, then Eureka, you see there. And we produce out of Mexico and Latin America. Then we produce out of Australia, and we have production running in India and Indonesia. So when you see this footprint, this global footprint, that's what we call a super indie. So we are not, in our world, in our entertainment space, in our business, you know, on one hand, we have the American studios, the Warners and the Disneys. They cover the world, and their conglomerates run out of America. And then the super indies are mainly UK based. It's companies like ITV, Banijay, All3 Media, and Fremantle. And companies like us, the super indies, we try to achieve a global reach to produce out of the key markets around the world. And then on the next slide, here now the black labels pop up, Fremantle International. And that's the bit that I run, the international distribution side. And you see we have sales offices all around the world. So from the left-hand side, from Toronto, New York, Miami, Los Angeles, London, obviously. We have an office in Germany, Dubai, Japan, Singapore, Australia. So also on the sales side, we reach the world. What's interesting is, so the bit I do, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it later on, out of these local offices, we sell our shows to the local broadcasters, the local platforms, and all these local offices are run by local people. So as you probably hear by my accent, I'm a German guy living in London. The Dubai office, for instance, is run by a lady of Iranian origin. Singapore is run by Singaporean people. Sydney, the same, and Tokyo, we have Japanese gentlemen helping us. So it's like, for us, it's super important that when we have boots on the ground in these local markets around the world, that we do that with a very local approach. So our people, we speak the languages, we know the culture, we know what's on telly in these countries. Super interesting is in some markets, of course, you have cultural filters, or you call it, sometimes you can call it censorship. You know, when you sell to China today, you really need to know what you can sell and what not. The same thing, you know, there's drama that we produce out of, that we produce in the UK that we could never show in the Middle East because of the topics we touch, right? Sexuality, it's impossible, some of the stuff that we produce, which is completely normal for us in the Western world, we cannot show in some other parts of the world. And this knowledge of what works where, that is super, super important for us. Any of you know this company, Bertelsmann? Ever heard about it? I see a lot of this. No, okay. I don't hold it against you. So Bertelsmann is a German company. It's about 150 years old. And it's a foundation. It's a family foundation. So it's essentially a family controlled company. And Fremantle is part of that company. So when you look at this here, Fremantle, we are, as we call it, the content bit. So we produce shows, right? And then our sister company within our Bertelsmann group is RTL. RTL is a commercial broadcaster. RTL is like the ITV of the UK, right? It's commercial broadcast. We're the biggest commercial broadcasting group in Germany. We run broadcasters in Spain and in France and in Hungary. So we do a lot of television, commercial television. Another sister company is Penguin Random House. We are the biggest book publisher in the world. We love books, and then we love music. BMG is also part of the group. Then when we create shows, whenever possible, we try to cooperate within the group. So as an example, we work on premium factuals around artists represented by BMG, musicians. You know, there's a David Bowie documentary that we just as a group do for HBO, for instance. Penguin Random House, we love books, you know, so when often we work with them of bringing a book to life in form of a drama, for instance. So it's truly a content company. Our core content production distribution. I really don't like the word content. I talk about shows or programs or whatever, but content for me sounds very descriptive, and shows are really emotional. You're selling emotions. That's what you do when you create shows. Content sounds a little bit naya, but the world talks about content. The next slide. And by the way, please ask questions whenever you have some.
Yeah, and can I ask a question?
Yes.
I noticed that you didn't mention that you were in Africa. Is that something, am I wrong? Are you in Africa? Are you thinking about being in Africa? What are your thoughts? Is that just not a market that's, yeah, I'm just intrigued that I saw you globally, but I didn't notice that you weren't in Africa. So I just thought I'd ask.
Yes, so we are in Africa and we're not in Africa. So one thing is we run Africa out of Dubai. So we are selling a lot of shows to Africa. Africa is actually a really, really good market for us. And that's one thing. The other thing is we really try to break more into the African market. What we did now is we launched, earlier this year, we launched our first African drama. So we went into co-production with SABC in South Africa and produced a show called Richter. That's a drama set in South Africa. It's an investigation. It's a thriller. It's a murder story. It's in the sugar fields, and we financed the development of the drama. We co-financed the show, so we put in 50% of the budget, and then we brought it to the market. Frankly speaking, drama out of Africa or South Africa is not a known quote-unquote product in the international market. You know, when you look at drama, international drama, our buyers, they know American drama and they know British drama. Then after that comes European drama, and I mean Australian drama and Canadian drama. After that comes European drama. And then from there, we work our way up. You know, we try to establish always new drama. So we established over the last 2 years, we established drama out of Israel for the international market, which we haven't done before. So when you go to Netflix, you should see a show called Stiesel. And we established, we built a line of drama out of Latin America, out of Chile and out of Mexico. and now we're working on South African drama with Richter. And the great thing about Richter is we got it in second season. So we got enough international broadcasters excited about it that we find enough money to produce a second season. And then we have Family Feud. You see that on the left-hand side here. Steve Harvey is an American talent, and he does Family Feud in America. And it was, by now it was like 3 years ago, we had him on a TV conference in Dubai covering Africa, Middle East. So Africa, Middle East, it's MENA. So it's Africa, Middle East. It's a description of one big market region. And by many companies, it's run out of Dubai and not out of locations straight out of Africa. And so we had Steve on this TV convention in Dubai, and then he loved it, and he loved the African aspect of it. And he said, he wants to go home. He wants to do a show. He wants to do Family Feud in Africa. And it was a crazy journey. We found him the production company on the ground. And we did Family Feud with Steve Harvey in South Africa, and we did it in East Africa. The challenge in the African market is the getting enough financing out of the markets to produce shows. Yeah, but it's possible, and we're in it now, and it's super exciting. Is that about an answer on that question?
Yeah, no, that's really good, because I get the impression that it's a growing market. So I just wanted to, I don't know, that's the impression, or maybe it's more fantasy, I don't know, but I just wanted to hear how you're feeding into that and what.
It is totally a growing market. It is totally a growing market. And these, you know, whether it's drama out of Africa, out of Latin America, or out of Israel, any none of these core known drama markets, for instance, yeah. The world is changing out there. So it's like there's a lot more curiosity in Spain, in the UK, in America to look at foreign drama, you know, and that is mainly triggered by consumption on demand. You know, when you, in the old world, 10 years ago, we were all producing for broadcast television, programmed in a linear way, okay? And when you program for linear television, you're dependent on a broadcast schedule. And when you're dependent on a broadcast schedule, you have to reach the biggest audience in your country at that moment in time. So you always go for the biggest common denominator. You go always for the most mainstream show. While when you work in an on-demand environment, you can super serve niche audiences or smaller audiences. You can zoom in on young adult. You can zoom in on on niche factual. You can zoom in on Italian drama in America. You can zoom in on Scandinavian drama. You can find a space for Richter from South Africa, as well as for the next drama out of Israel. And that's a lot easier, or that's only possible really, actually, in an on-demand environment. So this whole experimenting with shows from different parts of the world, that's all triggered by on-demand. That's great. That's a huge opportunity for all of us.
Yeah, it sounds really exciting, actually, that these new audiences and new curiosities are opening up. I'll let you get back to it, but thanks so much for the answer.
Sure. Next slide up. Drama. So while on entertainment, Fremantle, with our 430 entertainment shows, we are super mainstream, as you saw, from Idol to cooking to whatever. In our drama is, at the moment at least, it's pretty much premium drama. So most of our drama is, well, it's actually for subscription services, as you see here. Mosquito Coast for Apple Plus. Anna, fantastic show for Sky, and then in the rest of Europe it was on Disney and on HBO. The Investigation was on the likes of like TV2 and SVT, so like state broadcasters in Scandinavia, but around the world it was on HBO, for instance, and Stiesel is on Netflix. So we focus on premium, high quality drama. Some of it is based on book IP. Some of it is based on true stories, like The Investigation was based on the so-called submarine murder that happened in Denmark about 3 years ago, where a young journalist was was invited to a submarine that a private scientist, rich person built himself, and she never came back from that submarine. So he killed her. And this is the story about how the murder was solved. And so true stories we love. Stiesel is an original creation by us. Anna, that is a post-apocalyptic scenario. It's a world of, once you hit puberty, you catch a virus and you die, which is actually just an excuse to create a world without adults. It's just a world full of kids. And how would that world look like? And it's a very violent post-apocalyptic world. But at the same time, it's a beautiful world. So we love drama, and we are also now, over the last 2 years, we went into films, into movies. So when you look on Netflix, you find a movie made in Italy, Sorrentino movie, Hand of God. And the Hand of God was nominated for Best Foreign Movie at the Academy Awards. And that's a movie we produced. So we're also going into theatrical now. And here are some samples of big factual docs that we're getting involved in. And it's really everything, you know. It's from Arctic Drift, which is well, global warming and going to the Arctic, to the North Pole, and finding out how global warming has an impact on the North Pole, and how that, again, the melting ice cap has an impact on all of us. To Ghislaine Maxwell, to Francesco Totti's soccer. Veleno was children abuse. So it's like from really social relevant topics to climate change, to sports, to could be anything. You know, it's like what we love when we do factuals is unique access. What's the unique access on this big topic that nobody else has? Is it that, well, Totti wants to do it with us? You know, an important sports star wants to work with us. That's fantastic. Or with Ghislaine, it was great research, and we got access to a lot of witnesses that spoke to us, that agreed to us working on camera. Veleno was based on a podcast in Italy. You know, there was a podcast a couple of years ago that investigated that child abuse scandal that was about 10 years old. And the craziness about that was, it was a scandal and it was labeled child abuse 10 years ago, but actually it wasn't child abuse. It wasn't child abuse. It was just reason found to take kids away from people, from parents that didn't have enough means to defend themselves. You know, it's like, it was really, that was bad. Yeah, so like very unique stories. We love to bring them to the screen, and then tell you a little bit of Fremantle International, the stuff that we are doing on the next slide. And here I give you some samples of what we do and how we operate. You know, this is about the section of creating shows and bring them to market and how we do that, right? So on the international side, you know, global content. So we have a department within international that is going through, that's speaking constantly to all the producers, our in-house producers, external producers. And it's really a conversation on what's on your slate, what do you want to do next, you know, and an interaction of we feeding back on ideas of, wow, this idea could have an international market for these and these and these reasons, while a lot of TV ideas we create in the UK or in France or in Spain are really local, and we tell the producer, well, it's a great TV show, but it's probably not for the global market. So still do your show, but don't expect it to win the world, right? And there we help on financing the shows. We help on giving feedback on the creative side. We give feedbacks on scripts for drama. We give feedback on casting. So any kind of aspects on the creation side, we feed back into to make a great local idea, potential great global show. Then we think a lot about marketing. How do we position a show? What's the USP of that show? How do we communicate that to the global international market? So in the background here, you see a photo. That's a photo of the show of Investigation. Investigation is that drama based on that submarine murder. That submarine murder that really caused huge headlines 3 years ago when it happened. Because it was a young female journalist that got killed, and because it was a cat and mouse play between the cop and the murderer to really find out who did it and how it happened. And the unique thing about that drama was we had Tobias Lindholm. He is a writer, producer, showrunner. He worked on great theatrical movies. He worked on drama shows for Netflix. So he was a unique production talent, and we put him in the foreground. So it was, for us, a combination of a true murder case that hit global headlines and the very unique theatrical and amazing US TV production talent that created the show. And that's how we positioned this show, this specific show in the global market, and communicated it. And then on the sales side, once we have position the USP of a show, and we say, okay, this is how that's the USP of the show. This is how we're going to talk about the show. Then we start selling it. And that's the core of our business, and more to it in the next slides. Here, a couple of samples of how we fund TV shows. So in the UK, as an example, when you produce a drama now for ITV or for the BBC or Channel 4, as you all know, drama budgets are going up because we all fight for the same production talent. We have inflation driving the costs, you know, from energy to everything gets more expensive. So production costs are going generally up, or went up over the last couple of years. You can say roughly the average UK drama probably costs around about £1.5 million per hour now. And at the same time, the license fee being put in by the BBC or ITV over the last couple of years stayed flat. They put in the same money now in 22 as they put in 4 or 5 years ago, while during that period of time, production costs probably went up by 20 or 30%. So what we call that the financing gap is going up. So on the left-hand side, that's Salisbury Poisoning, a drama you might have seen last year on the BBC. Dancing Ledge, one of our Fremantle production companies, created that for BBC. So at that moment in time, you know, we had a budget. So we create the show. The way it works, I mean, most of you work in production, so I'm most of you know how this works. So the producer writes a drama, and then that drama gets looked at by the head of production, and we create a budget. And then on Salisbury Poisoning, we saw, oops, you know, that's going to be a huge gap. So while the BBC puts in maybe half of the financing, and then there is about 20% soft money, tax incentive, there was still a 30% gap. And for a big show like Salisbury Poisoning, that was a huge gap. So we were missing a lot of money. And sometimes we put our own money in there, and sometimes we try to pre-sell a show. So with the script of Salisbury Poisoning, we went into the US market and we pitched it. And we got AMC on board as in a pre-sale scenario. So they bought into the concept of Salisbury Poisonings before the show even started production. And then they committed to the US license fee. And then we still put in some top-up money in as Fremantle from the distribution side. We closed the financing, and then Dancing Ledge could go off and produce the show. Okay. You see Cara Delevingne twice here on Planet Sex and No Man's Land. That's a mistake in the production. I'm sorry, in that slide here. I'm sorry for that. Let's go to Cara on the right-hand side. So we are doing currently a show with Cara called Planet Sex. And that is a 6-hour factual series where we talk about sexuality. What defines our sexuality? Is it our education? Is it our DNA? Is it religion? Is it our social surrounding, our upbringing? And Cara is the face of the show. And the idea was, when we created the show, Cara would travel the world, go into different parts of the world, and we look into sexuality in Japan or in Europe or in other parts of the world. She undergoes experiments on her own body. I mean, Cara, as you know, she defines herself as gender fluid, and she undergoes experiments on her own body, like her DNA and, you know, analysis, and why is she as she is, and why are we behaving the way we behave. A wonderful concept, absolutely fantastic, because I think it's a very important story to tell. And Cara gives us a very strong voice. And Naked, one of our production labels in the UK, created the show. And then one day, Simon Andre, who at that time ran Naked, and he now runs our UK production business, he came into my office. I will never forget, it was about 2.5 years ago. He says, "This is the show I want to do. I have Cara, and this is going to be amazing, exciting. We have the BBC. We need money. We need a lot of money. This is going to be an expensive show because we have to produce with Cara around the world. So how do we do that?" And we secured a pre-sale with Hulu. We brought them on board. So that's a VOD platform in the US. And then Fremantle put some financing into it. We closed the financing. We had enough money together, and then Naked could go and produce the show. And similar situation on Enslaved with Sam Jackson, the commissioning, and there we helped an independent production company. They came to us and said, "Okay, we're going to do this show for Epix, premium pay in the US, and for the CBC." But they needed about $2 million an episode, a lot of money for a factual show, and some tax rebate they had, but they were missing a lot of money. So at that moment, what we did is we just put gap financing in. We wrote the check, put it into the show, and took the risk, which at that time was a big risk. But on the other hand, it's an important story to tell. and Sam Jackson was the voice and the face of the show. So we just believed that the show could travel. And then last year it was on the BBC. We sold it all around the world, and became super successful for us. Any question on this financing bit? Because this is really complicated, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about, it's not just a show gets created and financed by a broadcaster and then we take it out into the world. This financing bit is actually really complicated, especially when the show is a little bit more expensive.
Hi, Jens. I think Simone is asking the same question I was going to ask, actually.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, how would I, say, as a director, come to you? I've got all these projects, come to you. You know, how would you get, would you need to see that I've got some finance first, or someone attached first before coming to you?
Yeah, so basically, if you're the creator, okay, if you create a show, first advice would be you have to partner up with a production company that helps you to realize that vision, because you have a story, a narrative in mind, right? And then the question is, first question is, how do you make it perfect for your local market? And you need to do that in combination with a production company. And then you have to think about the realization side, like how do you want to do it? What kind of production, what does the production need? And then from there, you need a production manager who helps you to budget the show, that you have an idea of how much money do I need to produce this show. That's always super important. And then you have to go out and sell the show either to a local broadcaster or to a streamer. And if you work with a Fremantle production company, or you work with an independent production company, the Fremantle production companies sometimes come to us and we discuss it with them, what could be the perfect route to market. Most of our production companies are actually really experienced in it. They work on an idea, and then from the beginning, they have an idea. This could be local broadcast, this could be a platform, this could be Netflix, because that's the purpose of a production company. They have to be in constant dialogue with all these platforms and know, well, Amazon is looking for this, Netflix is looking for that, Disney is coming to market, they're looking for a show in this space, right? And that's where first and foremost you need to talk to, with a production company.
So we basically come to you at really the last stages. It's never at the beginning.
It's not at the beginning. You come to us when you have the show at a certain development level. Production is involved. You know the cost side of it. You might have the anchor broadcaster already attached. The BBC Three or whoever else, but you're not yet in production. And you might be looking for money, or you might be looking for advice how to shape this idea so that it can really pop international.
Okay.
So sometimes it's more money driven in some situations, but sometimes money is really not the issue, because it's not an expensive show and you find the money in the local market. It's more the ambition to, well, while I create this show, why don't I create a show that can also travel, right? And that's where we come in with creative advice and creative feedback.
Thank you. So just finally, so with something like The Hand of God, did they come to you once they'd finished, once they shot the film? And they just
on The Hand of God, it was it was script, the filmmaker who is an amazing Italian filmmaker, and there was a phone call to Netflix. Right. You want this, yes or no? And if you don't want it, it goes somewhere else. So that was, that wasn't the hardest bit, and it was done before the film was produced. That being said, we are just doing it on another movie that we are in production with, and we financed the movie with some other partners at a risk finance. And we sold the movie during production when we had the first scenes, and we created a sizzle, and we also have some star power attached to it, and we just took the risk and then sold it at the second stage, and we're selling it now to a platform. So both is possible.
Great. Thank you.
Another thing that I haven't spoken about, and maybe now is the right moment because we're still talking about production. The market is really sensitive now. All commissioners are really sensitive that, you know, because here in this funding model and production partnership, this is about creating a package, you know, who develops, who writes the show, who's the camera person, who is the producer, who is, you know, it's like when you're setting up your production team or your package, and when you think about who's the writer for this show, what's very, very important these days is you have to be really authentic. Okay. What do I mean with that? So when we talk about sexuality and gender fluid and bisexual and this world, well, you know, you need to work with a face and with a person that really is credible in that space, right? So it shouldn't be, you know, like Planet Sex by the stereotype, usual, I don't know, heterosexual man traveling the world talking about sexuality. That wouldn't be an interesting show, right? Cara really makes a difference. Or when we are currently in production, or we finished production on an amazing show from Latin America called Señorita 89. And that's a drama. It's set in the world of beauty pageants in the 80s. And that was beauty pageants in Latin America, end of the 80s, that was a bad world. You know, it's like you had poor girls, very often girls of relatively poor backgrounds, dreaming becoming Miss Latin America and making a career that way. And they had to undergo, you know, plastic surgery, drugs were involved, sexual abuse was involved. It was a really bad world. And together with Fabula, there were Oscar-winning producers, Academy Award-winning producers. We wanted to do this show. And when we started talking about the show, we were all in agreement. This show has to be written by women. This show has to be directed by a woman. And clearly, we don't want to show the female characters just as victims. We want to tell a story that shows them being strong characters and really making a change in that situation. So we had to look at it from the perspective of strong voices and strong female storytelling, but also the team, you know, the director and the writer. It's an all-female writers team on that show, and that becomes more and more and more important. When we sell a show today, the broadcaster, the platform asks, who is behind this show, who is involved, what's their track record, and why do they tell this story? Why do they want to tell this story? And why are they the right people to tell this story? And it's all about authentic voices. And that changed very much over the last 5 years. You know, it's like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, that wasn't so important. It's super important in 22 and beyond. Selling and marketing and building the brand. So it's like I spoke earlier about, you know, what's the USP? What's the unique selling point of each show? What makes it special? And then how do we position it in the market, and how do we communicate around that show? So we are currently doing a show called Kingdom of Dreams. And Kingdom of Dreams is 4-hour factual documentary. And we want to dive into the world of fashion in a big way. And we work with an amazing production team. They're called the Misfits. They did the Alexander McQueen movie. I think that was 3 years ago. And we went to them and we said, we want to do a show in fashion because nobody did that space yet, really. And we had access to a great footage archive. There was a Canadian non-scripted factual series on fashion in the 80s and 90s and 2000s that ran it was a show out of Canada. It ran for 25 years all around fashion, and we had access to that archive. So with that idea, we went to the Misfits. You see the two guys in the middle here. And just after they did the amazing McQueen movie, and they created a show for us. And we dive into this world of fashion, and it's about, it's an economic war. It's big commercial empires fighting each other. And it's about how they use the creative talent and partially suck it dry, big designers ended up in drugs, committed suicide, because it's brutal. Fashion is brutal. And we wanted to enter into this world. And it's really fantastic. So we had the right entry to the idea. We had the right talent involved. We are now in post-production of the show. We early on at idea stage, we sold it to Sky. And while we're in production, we sold it to HBO. And now we're selling it to the rest of the world. So it's really like we are very deeply involved in each of the shows. And on the right-hand side, that's the show that I already told you about, the investigation, the submarine murder. And what you see here is communication around the show is super important. Like, how do we place it in variety? How do we place it in broadcast? How do we place it in mainstream media? It's like the investigation, the important angle for us was that young lady that got killed on that submarine 3 years ago. She was a journalist, and her name was Kim Wall. And Kim wrote for The Guardian. Kim wrote for the New York Times. So when we started to create the show, we went in touch with The Guardian. We got in touch with the New York Times and said, we want to do a TV show around a drama, a very serious, high quality drama around the investigation of a murder case. And by the way, what I forgot to tell, that's also an important tip for you guys, is before we even started the production of the investigation, we spoke to her parents. We spoke to the parents of the victim. That is super important. When you create a story around a true case, especially if somebody got hurt, got killed, got badly impacted, whatever the story is, go and find the relatives, the parents, the family, and talk to them first. Number one, if they don't want the story to be told, if the story is still too fresh for them, they don't want to have it on telly, it's just too hard for them, don't do it. Just don't do it. And if they're open to it, then explain them what you want to do. And on the investigation, the unique thing was our creator, Tobias Lindholm, he had because it was a very unique murder case, and because it was still very fresh, just 3 years old, and it was, especially in Scandinavia, it was all over the headlines for months, because it took them months to prove that the murderer was guilty. The unique idea here was, at no point in time during the 6-hour drama, we show the killing or we show the murderer. It's basically a murder story without the murder on screen. And that was an idea that we created before we even spoke with the parents. So we basically, that's, if you are fine with us telling the story, this is how we want to do it. And this is why we believe this story can be told already now, while it's still relatively fresh. And they loved it. They really, really loved it. We gave them then, during the writing process, we gave them the scripts even before we gave them to the broadcaster. They could approve the script. If there was something in there that was too sad or too tough for them, we would change it. So that's an important thing. Whenever you do something that is around a true story, think about other people that have been involved, and should you talk to them first?
Jens?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, just because we've got a little bit of time, is there any, because obviously some of these guys will work, some people run production companies or producers, and they may not have, they don't have necessarily the might or the support around them of such a big organization. What thoughts or what should they be thinking about when coming up with ideas or working on programs to ensure they have a kind of international appeal? What are those kind of key things that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, good question. So the key things is, well, number one is do you find a story that has global relevance, right? Salisbury poisonings, for instance, that drama, you know, it's like the Russian Secret Service poisoning an ex-Russian agent on British soil is a phenomenal idea for the British audience, but at the same time, immediately it's a phenomenal idea for the global audience. So that turned into a super hit. So it's like this idea that you want to do, that you want to bring to life. Does it have global relevance because the story is already known around the world, right? Or parts of the world. It doesn't always need to be a global phenomenon. Then there's some easy stuff like the lifestyle, you know, like when we cook with Jamie Oliver or we do grand designs or shows like that, they're made primarily for a UK audience, but they are within a genre that really travels well because it is lifestyle, right? That's an easy one to travel. On premium docs, for instance, if you find really unique access, you know, stories people haven't heard about, you know, it's like scandals that somehow that made the headlines, but nobody yet got to that person and told the story. And that scandal or the big headline that could have been last year, but it could also be something like that's years ago, right? Also possible. The beauty is you're all based in the UK. That means if you create something, you automatically create it in English language, and you create it with a perspective of producing it in the English language. So a creator, same situation like you in France or Spain or Germany, it comes from a much harder position because English is really the common language. If you produce something in non-English language, it's much harder to travel the world. Do any of you have a concrete question on a concrete topic or maybe a genre? You want to know more about a specific genre?
Can we stop sharing the screen for a minute so that everybody
Yeah.
can kind of, just so that we can just see you? That'd be great. Yeah, is there any questions?
Yes, Emma.
Hi, Jens, nice to meet you. I work for Fremantle myself, actually, for Naked. I'm the showrunner for all the Escape to the Country brands. And on that, we can't make it. You talked about deficit funding. We can't make our shows without FMI. I just wonder if there's anyone in your team that I might be able to contact to find out what the reach is and how many territories we're selling our shows to, because I'm looking to reach out more, get a wider reach on social media. Actually.
Totally. Angela and Kira can give you the, they run. So within Fremantle International, we have a drama team and we have a non-scripted team. The non-scripted team is run by Angela Nelis, and Kira is on the side. So you can send them and they can immediately give you the territories and the broadcasters and the reach, of course.
Lovely, thank you.
Any more questions, guys? We've got a couple more minutes. Yeah, David.
Hey, Dave.
Hi, hello. Can you speak a little bit about the rights that Fremantle would have on a property, a program that might be brought to you? If I'm running a production company, I've got a format, a show idea to sell around the world. What does it involve? What is that kind of contract negotiation that we have? What's the process we go through?
Good, excellent question. So entertainment format, right?
Yes, an entertainment format, yeah.
So an entertainment format is that's a format that we would look at from the perspective of, okay, Dave wants to do this great entertainment show, or he does this great entertainment show in the UK for a UK broadcaster, and he retained the international rights. And what does it take for us? So as Fremantle, we would look at your show, and we have a lady called Vasha. She runs the format acquisition, Vasha Wallace, and she runs the format acquisition. She looks at it and she would say like, wow, and she knows what's happening in the world, by the way. That's really important at that moment, that you speak to somebody who knows you want to do a dating show, right? And she knows all dating shows around the world. She literally knows all dating shows around the world. So she can tell you the dating show that you have in mind or that you're about to do for Channel 4, same thing is already happening in Sweden or in the US, okay? You could still do your show for the UK because they still like to do it, right? But then the international would be limited, right? Let's say Vasha says, wow, freaking hell, Dave's dating show is fantastic, super good idea. We would do a distribution deal with you, right? We would basically say, we would represent your format around the world. We would take a commission for that. And the beauty working with Fremantle or a company like Fremantle is, as you saw earlier, we produce in 20 countries around the world. So immediately Vasha and her team would take your dating format. The moment it hits UK screen, it gets produced in the UK. We have UK ratings. We know the success, how it did. We take your format and that success around the world into our 20 production countries instantaneously. So everybody, and we are basically in all the big markets. So in all the big markets, your dating show, the producers on the ground know it and can go out and pitch it to their local platforms and local broadcasters. Quality control is great because you're in all the key markets of one production company. You know, if you sell that to 20 different countries, how do you make your control? Who controls your quality? That really your format gets produced and not a funny variation of it. And the majority of the revenues at the end of the day end up with you, you know, the format revenues. So when then that format will be produced in America, in the American production budget, there's a line item called format fee, right? And that format fee goes back to you, right? So that's how you would make the money, and you would still control the IP. You're the owner and the creator of the IP. It stays with you. We represent your format around the world. And if there's a market where we don't have production on the ground, like in China, then we work with local Chinese broadcasters or producers, and they do a local version. So we make sure that your format will also be represented outside of the countries we have production on the ground.
That's great, thanks.
Brilliant. We should really wrap up. Has anybody got any burning questions that we can squeeze in before we wrap? Faraz, yeah? Okay, go.
Yeah.
Hi, Jens. Thanks for your time. I run a small production company. I'm just curious, we're starting to see distributors sending out briefs about what is working internationally. It's almost kind of doing it the other way around from what you're mentioning, where we can look to work with that distributor, get an idea away that they think will get international appeal, and then go to a broadcaster in the UK and say, we've already got the deficit funding, and make that idea more attractive to them as a price point. I think with the squeeze of places like Channel 4 and the BBC, that's becoming more attractive. Is that something that you guys at Fremantle are looking at doing? Are you sending out briefs and almost acting a bit more like a commissioner, or do you always look to just distribute finished programs?
No, yes and no. So we're not sending out briefs. Okay, so that is really still, I believe, the job of the producer to come up with ideas. But what we do is we help to finance in alternative ways, right? So we had recently a brief from like an idea from an Australian producer who wanted to do drama there. That was like absolutely brilliant idea, but he couldn't get the Australian bit in place. So we took that Australian creation, and that will be a drama to be produced in Australia, but very smart idea. We took it to America first, sold it to a platform there. And then with that financing in place, the producer was able to go back into the Australian market and say like, oh, this is my show. This is what I want to do. I have Sundance from America involved. Why don't you take it, right? And then they sold it to Stan in Australia. Financing was closed, and now production is happening. And on some factual shows, sometimes on the extreme, you know, on factual, we even sometimes fully funded shows. You know, we are currently doing a feature film on the Glasfelds. They were Nazi hunters after the war. They're still alive. They lived an amazing life, tireless. And we had a producer traveling with them now for 2 years, and we financed the show. And it's the movie going to be finished this summer, and then we're going to bring it to market. So we sometimes help to set up the show first in another market. And sometimes we would commit to funding even before you go to your local broadcaster. If we believe it's really, really strong, we could tell you upfront, you know, like with Cara Delevingne, Planet Sex, you know, it's like, if at that moment Naked wouldn't have had BBC secured, just by that concept, just having Cara for that show, we would have immediately said, okay, we cover half of the show, let's find the other half.
But to be clear, that's something that you only do with your Fremantle group of companies.
No, with anybody. Okay. So you have an amazing idea for us, and then you come to us, and no, we're not limited at all. We love to be open for various reasons. One is, for us, it's we love great shows. So why shouldn't we work on a great show that somebody creates? And the other thing, it's also it's a way to get to know each other, right? But because normally we in the repeat business very often, right? So there's a relationship. It worked, you know. Creators happy with what we do. We are happy with the producer. And that's like, then we say, let's do the next thing. What can we do next, right?
So I've just got a quick question.
Yeah.
Did you have Cara signed up, committed to the project before
Yes.
they? Yeah.
Yes, and that was the big fine for that show, right?
Thank you.
Emma?
Sorry, quickly before we finish, can I ask what your background with it is and whether you worked in production at all?
Me. So I have a background. I studied psychology and economics. So selling stuff is my thing, okay, to be honest with you, from my background. And it wasn't clear whether it would be cars, fashion, or TV. But I wouldn't work in a normal company. That was clear. And then during university, I started to work in production. I was working for a production company doing commercials, you know, and then from doing little commercials, I thought, like, them, some people might do bigger stuff than commercials. So that's how I got in.
Fantastic. What a fantastic session. It really gave food for thought, definitely in terms of kind of thinking about your projects and how you position them and the opportunities that are available. So thank you so much, Jens. It was fantastic.